Hello and welcome to episode 82 of the Rhody Rumble podcast. Today I'm joined by the first varsity head coach of the University of Rhode Island women's lacrosse team, Jenna Slowey. Coach, thanks so much again for taking the time. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I hope you had a great holiday weekend. And I'm excited to get to know you, and I'm sure the Rhode Island fans are excited to learn a little bit more about you and obviously the women's lacrosse team that is coming, not this season, but the following season. So
Yep.
thank you again. I take it this is obviously a big summer for you, recruiting wise. I can imagine a lot goes into, building a team, building a roster, a program. But can you just share, what you've been up to and just some of your summer plans?
Yeah, the summer is crazy for us. I think historically it's always crazy in women's lacrosse. The summer is a big recruiting time. So myself and my staff are out on the road pretty much every weekend. So we're just in Maryland, in Pennsylvania. This weekend we'll be in Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. So we're all over the road, and obviously building a program, looks a little bit different than what some other people are doing. So trying to find great kids, throughout this whole process, we talked a lot about, we don't want to just take bodies to take bodies or take kids to take kids. We want kids that we think can compete at a really high level. And are really excited about building. So that's what this summer's about, trying to identify those kids talent wise. And then this fall will be about getting to know those kids, off the field and how they kind of fit into the culture we're trying to build.
And I'm curious, when you're on the recruiting trail, is there a certain, characteristic or attribute that stands out to you? What are you looking for in a player?
Yeah. Gritty. We're looking for gritty kids. Again, especially with starting a program, it's going to be a challenge. I think every program has challenges. A new program just has different ones. So we want kids that really can put their head down and work hard. It might not always be the most pretty play, but they find a way to get the job done. So gritty kids is definitely what we're looking for as we're hitting the road this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, spending the summer in the Ocean State as well when you're not on the recruiting trail isn't that bad at all. You're originally from Jersey, but I'm just curious, living up here in Rhode Island for almost a year now, what do you love the most about living here?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I really feel like it's like a hidden gem of the East Coast, especially in New England. The campus is 6 miles from the beach, some of the most gorgeous beaches in the country. I feel really lucky to be a part of it. I think our biggest thing is when we get a kid to campus, it kind of speaks for itself, right? So I think myself and my staff have done a really good job of identifying the right kids. And then once we get them here, we can be in the mix with them and competing for really high level kids, because who doesn't want to live at the beach? It's really lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say you definitely have to use that in some of your recruiting tactics. I mean, who can pass up on living at the beach? I know I did it the last 4 years. So
Yeah.
the program is set to compete in the Atlantic 10 beginning in the 2024-25 season, as we alluded to. So is that challenging for you to get players to commit? Some players that are just juniors in high school, some that are going into their senior year now. How do you tell a 17 or 18-year-old they have a spot at URI in a year from now? How do you fill those scholarships?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So this process has been really interesting. We do have kids coming to campus next year who will all take a redshirt year.
Okay.
I think part of that storytelling and what, I think we really drew kids in with is trying to show them the bigger picture, right? I think exactly like you're saying, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds, it's really easy to look only what's right in front of you. So, we try and paint the picture of, this is a life commitment. This is 4 years for 40 years. And for that class that's incoming, they really have a cool opportunity with the redshirt year to, exit URI with two degrees. So that's something that we really harped on with this class. And then with the 24s and the juniors that we have committed right now, who are rising seniors, it really was about being able to put your mark on something and put your stamp on something and being part of the first. I think it's a really rare opportunity in any sport, in any walk of life, to be part of something from the ground up. So we found kids that were really excited about that and excited to get to work. And I think you can look, 10 years down the road, and hopefully we're competing for championships and, doing really big things at Rhode Island. And they can look back and say, we were part of the first that helped bring that to the Ocean State. So it's been really exciting. The families have been great. The kids have been great. I think everyone's just super excited. And I think locally too, there's a lot of excitement, which we're pumped about.
Yeah, and I think you spoke on it just now, but pitching to, an athlete that they can be a part of, a group that paves the way for future Rhode Island women's lacrosse players and so on. Um, Speaking on being a former player yourself, do you find it as kind of a full circle moment when recruiting some of these athletes at 17, 18 years old? Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on them to make a big decision, but do you feel that you can, somewhat give guidance as, someone who went through it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think for any athlete, you've been there and you've walked in those shoes. And I think what's really cool about our department as well, even from the top down, our athletic director was a student athlete. So, and he's super involved and, it wants to get to know the kids, wants to get to know the team. And I don't think that really happens everywhere. So I think we're super lucky that we have a lot of people that have had similar experiences and want to give back and want to do it for the right reasons. And I will say times have definitely changed since when I played, both on and off the field. The game has gotten a lot different. The game has gotten a lot faster. So it's about finding, the right kids too that can play at that speed, which definitely looked a lot different than when I was playing. But no, it's super helpful to have a lot of people surrounding you that have had similar experiences and want to make sure that everyone's time at Rhode Island, they leave feeling like that was the best 4 years of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to backtrack a little bit just so that, some fans who may be watching this at home can learn a little bit more about you. A question that I love to start with, just with all the guests that I have on, is just what is your why or what motivates you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I touched a little bit on it. I think it is that giving back piece. I graduated college and I actually worked in New York City for a couple years in sales. And while I was doing great and, having a wonderful time, it just wasn't hitting my why. Right. So, I had the opportunity to get into coaching at the University of Richmond and stayed there for quite some time, which again is in the A10 and similar conference. And, I want to be able to help young women become stronger and more confident and ready to take on whatever their next steps are. Obviously, yes, to become a better lacrosse player. I'm super competitive. I want to win. I think anyone who does this at the next level, whether you're a player or a coach or a support staff, has that competitive drive. But really, like, sport has given so much more to me, and trying to make sure that kids kind of feel that as they hopefully work with me, work with my staff and move through Rhode Island. I want every young woman that leaves my program to leave feeling like they know who they are and they know what their core values are. And they know how to hit whatever goals they want to hit as they leave.
Man, I think that's a great answer because again, at 17, 18 years old, you come into a new place that you've never been before. And, whether you're an athlete or not, there's so many different, question marks and different things like who am I going to be in 3 or 4 years from now? What am I going to accomplish? And I'm sure for student athletes as well, I've talked to a lot of them, especially at URI. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot that they go through on the field, off the field. So to be sort of that, resource or that mentor, on the field and off the field, and help them so that they have, a great experience when they leave the University of Rhode Island. I think it's just a great answer overall, and is what a coach really should be. And I think something that URI is looking for in all of the coaches that they have within all of the programs. So that's great to hear. I just want to move on a little bit to your passion or your love for lacrosse. I always love to learn a little bit more about, how a passion or a love for a sport grows or how it begins. So I'm curious, how did you discover your passion or love for lacrosse early on or growing up? When did that happen or when did that start?
Yeah, that's a fun question too. So I'm from South Jersey, Morristown, New Jersey, and lacrosse is huge here. But I think outside of that, it is kind of a place where you are kind of thrown into playing lacrosse sometimes, especially on the women's side. But I come from a big family, so I'm one of five. And, I think in any capacity, there was always some sort of competitiveness or, outside doing something where someone probably left with something hurt or someone crying. So I think the competitive piece and the passion to do that really came from, being part of a big family and always trying to, one up each other a little bit. And then lacrosse kind of just where I'm from in the region, similar to New England and kind of where Rhode Island is, it is something that's super big there. So it kind of just flowed that way. I played a couple different sports growing up, but had the opportunity to really focus on lacrosse and play in college. And the rest is kind of history, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm from Long Island, so it's
Yeah,
huge down
exactly.
here as well. I can imagine. It's always tennis or lacrosse over
Yeah.
here. Anyone's playing golf, tennis, lacrosse, any of
Yeah.
those kinds of sports. So did you have someone in your life that kind of introduced you to the sport, a parent or relative or anyone, older sibling?
Yeah, kind of funny actually. So my brother's ex-girlfriend was a all-time player at our high school and played at William and Mary and competed at a really high level, went on to coach um, in England for a couple of years and now is back coaching at Morristown High School. So that was kind of the first person that I was like, oh, maybe I should get into lacrosse. Still around. She's still coaching at the high school. I think talked to her a bunch about recruiting. So it's funny. I think lacrosse is a really small world. So, you always know someone that knows someone or have some connection with someone.
Yeah, I think everything happens for a reason too. So in a way, lacrosse was going to find you, in
Yeah.
some way, whether it was through whatever connection. But that is kind of funny to hear. Moving on to college as a player, you attended Fairfield University. You were team captain in 2013-14, earned all MAC honors as a senior, finished 13th in program history in points and 12 in both goals and assists. Can you just share, what that experience was like for you as a player?
Yeah, Fairfield was great. I mean, right now, again, I don't know how much the listeners know about lacrosse, but they've won the MAC for the last 5 years, I want to say, maybe 6. So they've grown so much in terms of competitiveness too. So I'm really proud to be an alum from there. Actually right in front of me. I'm, staying in New Jersey because I'm recruiting here this weekend. There's a big Fairfield thing right in front of my face. But my time there was great. I think again, looking back, obviously the competitive piece and becoming a better cross player and a better leader are all the things you take away. But I think the real things you take away are, I'm 10-ish years out now, and being able to see my teammates, get married and have children, and be a part of that and continue to be a part of their lives. Like that is something that I want for this program as well. So yes, to win, we want to win. And, we look to compete for championships. That's what we're going to try and do in this conference. But we also want to create a sense of family, and create, a culture that really looks out for each other, and wants to be in each other's lives for years and years to come.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well, is that lacrosse and just sports in general builds a sense of community, and that, even your teammates from 10 years ago, you still keep in touch with. And, some of the experiences that you had at Fairfield, you're hoping to bring as well with you to, Richmond, Notre Dame, and now again onto Rhode Island. So I think that's just so amazing to hear, how, again, a former player can kind of give back in so many different ways. And now again, as a head coach at URI. Speaking of Richmond, you alluded to it before, one of your stops there. You were there for, I believe, 4 years, an assistant from 2017 to 2021. Helped the Spiders to an overall record of 64-16, won back-to-back conference titles in 18 and 19, earned NCAA bids in both of those years. Reached a high as number 10 in the national rankings for season, was ended by COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. And I think one of the most important things was a number 10 recruiting class in the country in 2020. I can imagine having the success and so much prior experience in the Atlantic 10 will be an advantage when the time comes to lead Rhode Island through conference play. But can you just talk a little bit about the Atlantic 10 conference? Obviously, you spent a lot of time, coaching in the A10 conference. So can you just talk a little bit about the layout of it and just some of the experiences and the success that you had at that level?
Yeah. That was one of the reasons that I was so excited about this opportunity, right? I have had a ton of experience in this conference, and I've won championships in this conference. So I know what it takes and what it needs to look like to build a championship team and a championship culture in the A10. The A10 also is growing, right? Like not only numbers wise and just sheer number of opponents, but also competitiveness. So it was a 2-bid league for the last 2 years, with an automatic qualifier and then an at-large bid, which, outside of some mostly Power Fives, there's not a lot of conferences that are getting multi bids. So I think that's really exciting. And in the last 5 years, there's been 3 different winners, right? So I think it's prime for the taking, right? I think, we've been talking a lot about, and a term we're using is patiently aggressive. Again, we have lofty goals. They're not going to happen overnight. But, I think it's important to say your goals out loud, and we do want to compete at the highest level in this conference. And again, trying to find the right kids and the right staff and the right support that believe in that. And again, it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of grinding and a lot of grit. But I think that this is a really fun conference to be a part of. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of competition. And I think it's only getting better and it's only growing. So we're really excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the A10 being a mid-major, it's, in my opinion, one of the most competitive mid-majors in all of sports or all of, collegiate athletics. So I think just the opportunity to step in as a new program and compete right away in such a competitive conference, like you said, will eventually in the long run be, I think a benefit to Rhode Island. Again, it's going to take time and there's going to be some or developmental process to it, but there's rebuilding with almost every team and every program. But for now, it's not even just rebuilding, it's just building. And I can imagine it's a stressful process, but it's sort of one of those things where you invest now and in the end, I'm sure it'll be a reward and a high benefit towards
Totally. And I think the cool thing about that too, that you touch on, Adam, of, a rebuild versus a build. I think being able to come in and start your culture, especially from scratch, and not having to rebuild a culture, but being able to start a culture. We're setting the standards and the expectations right away. So every kid that's coming in knows what they're getting into, right? Where that's not always the case sometimes when there's coaching changes or, you're taking over a program. So I think that's another really awesome positive that we have here that, yes, we're starting from ground zero and we got to build our way up. But we're all doing that together and we're doing that with the same goals in mind and the same, value set in mind, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and I think to establish that culture early on or from day one as well, again, all the players that you recruit, everyone that you bring in from coach to, staff to anyone, players, they'll know what the plan is from day one. And again, I think as long as people can stay healthy and people can, follow the plan, obviously, for as long as their time is at URI, there should be success in the long run. Like you said, with other programs going through coaching changes and transfer portal and other things like that. Certain things that every program reaches at some point in time. But for now, I think it's a good position that this program is in starting from, the ground up. Definitely nice to hear. Prior to URI, most recently, you were an offensive coordinator and draw coordinator for Notre Dame as well. The team performed well, I'd say, ranking 20th in the nation, scoring offense, 21st in points per game, and 13th in both draw control percentage and draw controls per game. How do you feel that having success at a school like Notre Dame and in a conference like the ACC prepares you for this next chapter at URI?
Yeah. I mean, I was really lucky. The Notre Dame is a perennial powerhouse, right? So, I'm working with some of the top level athletes in the country at women's lacrosse. And it was a great experience. I think the thing that it prepared me most for, like you're saying, the ACC is a grind. Like every game is tough. Every game is the best team in the country, right? So you're playing tough opponents pretty consistently on a consistent basis. So I think it is that grind mentality, but then also that reset mentality. We were able to, after maybe a tough loss or a 1-goal overtime loss, we got to reset and hit the next thing, right? Because we're about to play now the number 2 team in the country or whatever it might be. So being able to put your head down and grind and grit it out, and then at the same time being able to reset quickly. So, and I think that's something important. Really, winning is relative, right? And competition is relative too, and at any level. So, with our girls being able to reset quickly, especially with a new building program, not everything's going to be perfect, right? And there's going to be a lot of learning curves, and a lot of bumps in the road, but I think that makes the end goal a lot sweeter. So, when we do hit those bumps, being able to learn from it, but then we got to reset and we got to move on to the next thing. Especially with our schedule and the way that women's lacrosse kind of lays out, you only get a couple days in between games. So that quick reset mentality where, yes, we're able to take some things from it and learn from it, and then move on, close that door and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I'd say having short-term memory as well. I've talked to a lot of football players as well, and they tell me all the time if something happens on Saturday and they don't like the outcome of the game or a certain play, they have to move on to the next play or even just the next game next Saturday because it's going to come up quick. So I think just with any sport, football, lacrosse, anything, just having short-term memory and not holding on to some of those things that, maybe did not go as planned or as anticipated, just moving on and finding ways to improve and make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, moving on and coming back full circle to Rhode Island once again, just a few more questions here. I'm curious, what your process was like to get hired, and to become the first, varsity head coach. Were you communicating with anyone, or did anyone approach you about this opportunity?
Yeah. So Brittany Miles, who's now my admin associate D, called me while I was at Notre Dame, and kind of laid out what their plan was for Rhode Island. And I was interested right off the bat. I am an East Coast girl from New Jersey, so was excited to get a little bit closer to home too. And then once I went and talked to everyone, I think it was really into this program, and how excited people were about this program, even from the top down. I mean, President Mark Parlange has coached lacrosse, is a huge proponent of women's sports and women's lacrosse in particular. So that was pretty plain to see right away. And then I was lucky enough as well. My former boss at University of Richmond is now the head coach at Clemson, which is a brand new program as well. So she had just kind of gone through that process the year prior of starting a program and what that feels like and what that looks like, and some of her priorities. So I was able to have a really great mentor and soundboard, off of what I need to do and what this would really look like. Because I think on paper, right, it's one thing, and then to really jump in head first is a totally different thing. So I was excited right from the start, and obviously, it feels like it's been much longer than it has. It's only been a year. And, I think even when I talk to people, they're like, oh, you don't play till spring 2025. I feel like that's tomorrow. So we're working really hard. We're getting a lot done. It's been great. It's been a great year of really a lot of recruiting and a lot of, building what we want our brand to be. And now we're really excited this fall to have, our first class on campus. And we had some kids on campus this year as well that we took over from the club team that have been a great ambassador to what we are trying to make and build Rhode Island lacrosse into. So it's been a great journey, even from that first phone call. I knew I was excited right away, and then being able to get on campus and really see what Rhode Island has to offer, not only the campus and the community, but, the greater area as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't understand what goes into being a head coach. I'm still trying to learn that myself as well, but a 24/7, 365 job all year round recruiting. And especially when you're starting the program, I mean, just hearing you speak a little bit about, certain players that you brought in and still some of the work left to do this summer, to prepare for not this season, but the next season. The work just doesn't stop. You continue to grind, you continue to find ways to keep yourself busy and continue to build this program. Because like you said, it feels like it's tomorrow, but still another year away. And obviously you have to establish a lot of things before, you start playing. You can't just start playing right away, but it seems like there's a plan in place, and I'm excited to see, what's to come of it. I'm curious how you've been working. You mentioned a few of them, but Thor and a couple of the other athletic administrators, Mark Parlange, obviously being a supporter of the program on campus. But how do you promote a program like this, brand new to the university? How do you build, a sense of trust with the fans and, a sense of community almost with, a brand new program?
That's a really great question. Yeah, we've been trying to get out as much as possible locally. My assistant Riley has done an amazing job. She decided, again, our season looks a little bit different. It is obviously a lot of recruiting right now. So she's also reffing. She's been reffing local high school games. She was on state championship games. We've been to local high schools to do, little tune-up clinics. We're running clinics this summer. I think as much as we can get out there and do things for the local lacrosse community and continue to build the local lacrosse community in Rhode Island, that is our goal, especially now, while that can be a little bit more of a priority, getting out and getting our faces seen and known and going to as much as we can, whether it's youth all the way up to high school. So yeah, she's done a great job. We're trying to do as much as we possibly can to make sure that we can continue to grow that community, not only lacrosse wise, but get people excited about what's to come in the next year and a half, and hopefully get a lot of people filling these stands right there at Meade Stadium.
Yeah, and I think again, it's definitely tough for you. Obviously, there's no alumni of the program, brand new program. So to get fans to come out if they don't know about the program is going to be challenging. So to start now on trying to again spread awareness about what is to come, about the program and just what the program is currently up to, I think is definitely going to again help in the long run, because you want to have the support And I'm sure the URI community will support when the time comes. So I'm definitely excited to see, what's to come. And I'm excited to see a packed Meade Stadium when the time comes. Uh,
Plan.
yeah, absolutely. One more question for you. Do you have just a message to the Rhody fans or the community who may be watching this interview at home?
I think first and foremost, just how excited and grateful we are to be a part of it. It's been so welcoming since, I stepped on campus in late June last year. And, I think we already feel the love, which we're really thankful for. And then secondly, get ready, right? So get ready to come out, get ready to support. I think what we've seen this last season with how fun women's basketball was and how much support they got locally. And, when you're playing at a really high level and you're winning, that's only like icing on the cake. But I think that we can do that for women's sports as well. And we're really excited, and everyone's been super supported from other head coaches to, local fans that we see as we walk around asking us questions. We want to give back as much as we can. So we're really grateful to be a part of this Rhody family, and we can't wait to, get out on the field and show you what we're about.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it again. Coach, best of luck preparing your squad for the next season, of course, in the future. I look forward to seeing all the program is going to accomplish, and thank you again for taking the time today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Follow us on Instagram, Rhody W Lax, and Twitter, and go Rhody. I appreciate it, Adam. Thanks so much.
Go Rhody. Thank you.